Hi everyone, hi Gary. So today I'm gonna talk about voice of the customers. So first of all, we're gonna go through the agenda of today lesson. So we're gonna talk about the VoC, the voice of the customer model, and three different kind of examples that I give and also like the reference. So next, we'll actually go back a little bit. So the voice of the customer is the model that related to defined phase of DMAIC model. So there's four main deliverables of the defined phase, and voice of the customers was one of it. So it is the analysis where we take into consideration the need and the want of the stakeholders, mostly the customers and also like the employees, when coming up with our CTQ, which our critical to quality metrics. This perspective also helps us to create a nominal value and the upper lower specification limits for the CTQ. VoC is also very valuable for identify problem, potential access, and even though access is going to be defined in the analyze phase, but based on the input and output of the customers themselves, only the input. So maybe the problem and the root cause may be able to define easier. So for the voice of the customers, there are four different stages for when we conduct VoC analysis. So it's going to be define, segment the market, plan the VoC, collect the data, organize, and interpret the data. So for define and segment the market, so the seamless method, like it's really easy. So we're going to look at the CPOC analysis, and then we're going to focus on the output on the customer stakeholder by asking the question, what are the output of for your process? Who are the customers of those inputs? Are there a particular group of customers who need focus on specific output? That's pretty much how we're going to define the segment the market. So next up, we're going to plan the VoC. There are two types of VoC data. So we have reactive data and proactive data. Reactive data, VoC data is going to arrive regardless, like the organization going to collect it or not. For example, the customer comment, product returns occurred, maybe market share changes, and technical support cores or sales. Proactive VoC data arrive only if it is collected by personnel. And then organization, that is the type that we want to go for. So to plan the VoC, there are some steps that may involve. So maybe we can look at choosing the stakeholders within each market segment to interview, create interview questions, setting up the interview, assign interview to team members. So the next step is going to be collect the data. So to be able to collect the data, so the interview themselves, we wanna need to collect the data themselves from the interview, from the stakeholder. So there's a few, like things to actually take into consideration when we're gonna do the interview. Either it's gonna be record the answer in bullet point, let them talk, and write down exactly what they say. So the last step is going to be organized and interpret the data. First, we're going to create an affinity diagram of all the raw VoC data by market segment. Secondly, we're going to name each of affinity diagram cluster in each market segment. These cluster names are called focus points. Third, we're going to determine the cognitive issues underlying each focus point. Cognitive issues are the detailed, unambiguous, qualitative statements of focus points in the language of designers or design engineers. So we're going to go through a little bit of three different kind of example. So the first one is going to be a case of the case of XYZ hospital. So the problem is that the patient not showing up for the appointment, also called no-show, has always been a big problem for the hospital. So according to the nation, no-show rates at similar clinic is around 5.5%. However, in psychiatric hospital, the no-show rates is nearly 30%. The staff constantly deal with frustrated frustrated patients, physicians, and staff. Patients complain frequently that it takes months to schedule an appointment, but the waiting room is empty when they arrive because other patient not showing up. So finally, administration had enough and put together a process to improve it using DMAIC, and voice of the customer was the first one. Was the analysis that they're gonna use. So for the defined segment of the market, they're gonna look at a lot of different market, the different segment, such as maybe the patients, the family, the appointment schedulers, insurance providers, patient registration reps and clinics, maybe nurses and physicians. So next up, they're gonna plan the VoC. So the team is gonna focus on collecting proactive VoC data, since no reactive VoC data was collected. But if they do collect the reacted VoC data, that could be very helpful as well. So next up, we're gonna choose the stakeholder within each market segment to interview. So maybe 5 patients, 2 appointment schedulers, maybe 5 nurses, 5 physicians, and 2 insurance providers. Creating the questions. So we're gonna ask them related to the patient scheduling process of the XYZ hospital. So maybe the question related could be, how do you feel about the patient scheduling process as related to patient no-show? And we can ask like question related to 5W and 1H question. What, where, when, how, and why. So the next step is gonna be, we're gonna set up the interview. So the black belt is gonna assign his team to ask the task of setting up the interview with various stakeholders and making sure it's following the timeline set up. Assigning interview to team members. So again, the black belt gonna assign interview to different team members and based on his understanding of each team members. Next step is gonna be collecting the data. So as I already mentioned earlier, we're gonna let the interviewee to talk. Let them talk. Not note down at bullet point and write down exactly what they say. And then we're gonna look at and organize and interpret the data. And then we're gonna identify like the answer, and we're gonna find out some potential X. So maybe the X could be patients who no-show frequently, or the lack of reminders, or the age of patients, and the time of appointment, or the insurance company. So all of this is gonna be maybe the X that we might looking for. Next up, I'm gonna talk about the example 2. So it is gonna be easier, and there's no friend of mine a few years ago or anything. So there's a guy, and he decided to do a voice of the customers analysis on for himself, for his personal need. And then he's designed to choose like his main customers gonna be his wife, his son, his mother, and his friends. And then he started to do the VoC data collection with his wife, and she lists out like 20 items that she thought he needs to pay attention, which is his CTQ if he would. And then he just figured out that like 20 items, like he cannot like afford all 20 items, and he started to create like a 1 to 10 dynamite scales, and asked his wife to use it to rate the importance of each of the 20 items. And 3 of the 20 items was more important, involved spending more time with the children, which account for 70% of his wife's stack of dynamite. Therefore, spending time with the children was his wife's CTQ. And then he's gonna decide to play with the children for at least 2 hours every Saturday, and his wife was happy with the result. The next one, the third example is gonna be Douglas Supply Chain Management Program improvement from Douglas College. So I think if you know that the school always send like the current student at the end of each of the semester a survey to understand what is the student concern and feedback for improvement for the program. And so the question related to the survey could be, how do you feel about a course? How do you rate the course? How's the professor's teaching style? And what's the problem that needs to be improved? And then the college actually understand that 30% come from the redundancy concept, learn from different kind of course in supply chain management that caused them to frustrated because it has been learned, but then it's repeatedly like over and over again in other courses as well, which very tired to hear that like multiple times. And then the school maybe adjust the course outline, like maybe we're gonna teach like the whole section of this concept in one class and then not gonna do it again in the other course to cover the need of the student. So that is pretty much like our presentation for the voice of customer model and 3 different kind of example. Here's the reference. Thank you for your listening. Bye bye.